Farming was one, if not one of the big issues, of course, during the referendum. And of course, post that referendum, it was, again, the big issue. Farmers are going to love it. It's going to be amazing for farmers. The thing is, as I've said before, compared to fishing, where the vast majority of people in the fishing industry did vote to leave, not so for the farming industry. The farming industry was indeed very, very split. And as I've said before, most of these people, you really do have to reach that point of compassion and realize that everyone who pretty much voted for leave did so probably because they were lied to in some way, shape, or fashion, promised things that were never going to happen in this post-Brexit utopia that they were sold. And again, to repeat James O'Brien's, comments, you've got to have, compassion for the conned, not the con men. And I think that going forward is how we've got to do things. I think if we need to convert these people over to our cause and make them start saying Brexit was a bad idea, we need to rejoin. Because if you can do that, if we could turn like the fishing industry, the farming industry back to Brexit has been an absolutely colossal disaster. We need to rejoin, the single market, customs union, and European Union. What an absolute fantastic win that would be for the rejoin movement. And you've got to start showing some compassion for these people. You really, really do. Because some of them were indeed absolutely conned out of their lives. They were missold so much information. And there's enough, by the way, there's absolutely fantastic video. Those people who think, oh, farmers all voted for leave. No, they really didn't. There's a fantastic video we covered just a few weeks ago from a farmer giving, I think, Michael Gove what for on the consequences of leaving. And then Michael Gove just saying, oh, it'll be all fine. But of course, to echo Michael Gove, well, Britain has had enough of experts. It's like, well, no, we need experts. This is why we have experts, because you very often need their expert advice and opinion in order to make, help you create and make informed and good decisions. But that's by the by. But unfortunately, the farming industry is indeed a bit of a pickle. And especially for small and medium farmers. And indeed, you may wonder, well, why have we got Jeremy Clarkson here? Because the story about Jeremy Clarkson today in the Private Eye exemplifies and shines a massive light on the problem that rich farmers like Jeremy Clarkson not going to be affected by Brexit. However, it's going to be the small, medium, indeed the sharecropper farmers who have farmed their land for hundreds of years, maybe some of them. They're the ones who are going to be most affected by Brexit. Indeed, the scheme to replace, of course, the EU grants, of course, who's going to get the lion's share of this? Turns out it's only going to be about 3% of the wealthy landowners are actually going to benefit. They're the ones who are going to get the lion's share of all this new money, where, of course, the EU one was spread out very equally and done far more fairly. And of course, I think that's probably a lesson that, shall we say, going forward into post-Brexit Britain, we are probably going to see quite a lot, especially under, shall we say, a Conservative government. So let's go diving into this then. Please, before we do that, though, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So on with this. This does come from the Private Eye. But again, this, I think, as I said before, this story exemplifies the very problem, but we'll get into this later. So, like I said, this comes from the Private Eye. Clarkson and a problem shed. Biowaste spreader writes, TV personality and, more recently, reality TV farmer Jeremy Clarkson has been refused permission to convert a lambing shed into a new restaurant at his 1,000-acre farm at Chillingdon in Oxfordshire. In his attempt to try and gain consent to create a restaurant that he intends to appeal in a farm building sited in a very prominent position in an area of outstanding beauty, a harbinger of indeed things to come if taxpayer support is withdrawn from English farmers post-Brexit. Clarkson indeed hasn't helped in his attempts to try and gain planning consent by just flagrantly breaking planning regulations of late. Back in 2020, he built a lambing shed with planning consent, but as the sheep weren't making any money, they were merged with another local farmer's flock. And at some point since then, he started using the lambing shed as a cafe and bar without planning consent. He's also in an investigation for a potential breach of planning conditions for applying to his farm shop that he only sells produce grown, reared, or made on the holding or the farm of local producers. So part of this justification for Clarkson's planning application of the 50-seat restaurant is that his current £83,000 a year subsidy, formerly paid by the EU, is being reduced to zero by 2028 as a consequence of the post-Brexit farm policy in England. He claims the subsidy makes up around 85% of his farm's profit, so he will need to diversify his business in order to survive. Rural planners across the country are going to hear a lot more of this reasoning. His dependence on subsidies is typical of the English farmers as a whole. Clarkson's farm shop also demonstrates the issues that can arise from controlling the diversification enterprises once planning consent has been granted. Some Chillingdon residents also claim that a formerly quiet village has now been turned into a theme park, and that the shop has created traffic chaos, with around 400 cars sometimes parked outside. The celebrity, of course, is the famous inhabitant, has no doubt exasperated Chillingdon's very traumatic experience. But if this kind of scenario is not to become all too common, much will indeed depend on how sensitively the government dismantles the old EU subsidy system that currently pays English farmers a combined total of £2.4 billion a year. At the moment, the proposal to introduce the Environmental Land Management System, or the ELMS, has been now and is targeted for 2027, that will pay farmers to look after the environment rather than to produce food. But the recent announcement of how this money will actually be distributed does not look encouraging. The National Farmers Union, among others, is warning that the system will only reward the few wealthy landowners handsomely for rewilding. And this type of projects will leave many farming tenants and small to medium-sized farms largely cut off from support. It is thought that roughly 35% of ELMS funding will go to the wealthiest 3% of landowners. So, apart from the few select large farm estates, much of the rest of rural England is now to risk becoming a vision of Jez's Chillingdon theme park. So, this is indeed, to be honest, quite worrying. And I think this is probably going to get worry farmers even more. But unfortunately, this is a sign of things to come. This really is the sign of things to come. Because farmers are going to have to diversify. Because, again, even though they produce food, they cannot produce it, again, to the large quantities they need. This is why many farmers often join together in cooperative to sell their food so they can get a better price. This isn't going to be good for them. And as you saw there, about 35% is going to go to the top 3 wealthiest landowners. Hardly a system that's going to, shall we say, reward all the farmers in the UK. And of course, this is going to cause a huge backlash eventually, as it always would have done, as we always said. You remove these EU subsidies. Oh, well, replace them. Replace them with what? Well, replace them with this. This is far worse than the one that we had in the EU. It's not just this. There's several other things as well, like the Regional Development Fund, the Levelling Up Fund is also coming under massive criticism recently. The fishing industry is also massively criticizing the government for not helping them subsidize some of the stuff that can help their industry survive. So this is all just going to pile on one incident after another. And unfortunately, I very much think, as the article said, this could very much be a sign of things to come. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.